everyone. Ariel Adams here with Superlative Podcast. Please listen to Blog to Watch's other podcast, A Blog to Watch Weekly, where we talk about the latest watch news and reviews. Today on Superlative, my guest is the founder of Lüm-TEC and Wiegand Custom Watch, Chris Wiegand. Chris, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm really happy to have you on the show. I've wanted to chat with you in this capacity for a number of years. And I think, of course, as you know, what I want to mention to the audience is that a Lüm-TEC watch was the first ever watch that I had received specifically for review on a Blog to Watch. This was back in 2007. I don't even recall the specific circumstances, but that's a monumental thing for me. The first of thousands of watches that I reviewed. I know that doesn't mean a lot to you, perhaps, but can you see how that means a lot to me?
No, it doesn't. I think you were one of the first reviewers that approached us back then.
Yeah.
I think we had like Uncrate, Playboy magazine, and Ariel Adams.
It was a very different time in media back then, wasn't it?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. For the watch scene in general, like there were very few micro brands. I think it was me, I think it was Maigret, and you had like Ocean 7. There was a couple, Bernhardt. There were a few, like just a handful of guys like doing it, and then there was just the big Swiss brands. You know? Yeah.
Later on, there was we'll call it an explosion in that market, but still at the time, this was small and hard work. And I still remember that initial unboxing, and the name Lüm-TEC, it was true. It was very much truth in advertising. I still remember the beautiful orange color of the Lume. Obviously, you had different colors and things like that. And part of your shtick was that, and I guess I don't remember the details, but you formulated your own Lume. You didn't necessarily just get Super Luminova. And honestly, I was kind of spoiled. What you were able to do as a micro brand in terms of the application, meaning the way it actually looks, the thickness of the print, the colors. Mm-hmm. No one really else has been able to capture that. I guess I had formed this idea of what a quote unquote micro brand should be able to be capable of based upon Lüm-TEC. And still to this day, very few brands have impressed me like you guys. So what is it you did correct all those years ago?
So I was doing like modifications for people. I was actually doing reluming dials by hand. Like people I'd take like an Omega dial, a Panerai dial, something like that.
Oh, by hand?
Yeah, it's like incredibly tedious, with a loop on and a tiny micro oiler. Actually just, like dot by dot, layer by layer.
Wow.
And just making these things as bright as possible. And I kind of figured out like the trick to getting the Lume to be super intense, because it's actually like tiny salt grains kind of. It's not like a paint pigment. So the way we're stacking them and then having the fluid that they're in kind of shrink as it dries, so it packs them tighter together. So like even you can do a thick Lume print, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be brighter because it's thicker, because there's a lot of like varnish and resin in there.
Interesting.
So when that kind of compresses down as it dries, it just becomes basically 10 times more material in there in the same space.
Now, what's your educational and experience background that allowed you to grasp these concepts? Because I have to say, you talk about it as though it's easy, but the reality is there's not a lot of competitors out there that do their own Lume. In fact, it's extremely niche. All of what you do is extremely niche. But when we speak to you, and it's a compliment, you sound so casual and relaxed about it, as though like, oh yeah, just a little weekend of watching YouTube videos, anyone can figure it out. But obviously that's not true.
Yeah, I'm self-taught with everything I do. Like I never went to college, just kind of messed around in high school. I wanted to learn what I wanted to learn. That's kind of like, I focus on certain things that I like, and I learned how to do those really well. It was like cars, motorcycles, watches, like everything. Like I like to improve it. Nothing's ever perfect to me, like I always want it to be better. I just kind of learn on my own.
I had this discussion actually last night with our team podcast where we were discussing vintage watches, and there's these two camps. There's like the idea that you got to get it factory perfect, like exactly as it was the day it was sold. But then as you know, as I know, as many other know, many products, watches, cars, they don't come out of the factory perfect. There's always some type of like accounting reason why they're cheap somewhere or some design mistake. And there's this wonderful ecosystem of, I don't want to call it aftermarket modifiers because that sounds like you're just like putting wings on cars, but improving, like making it sort of what the original engineers intended if they had, you know, maybe a little bit more time and money. And I highly admire that, but I think that that's sort of a misunderstood art within the watch space because it's either, they always think the original is perfect. And again, you and I know like sometimes, but especially back then, no, it wasn't.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially like if you look at like an older Rolex, like from the 70s, 80s, like they're kind of like loose, floppy piles of junk, you know, like they're not made well at all, but they're cool because that's how they are and they're valuable because that's how they are, you know, but like technically speaking, like they're not like the end links of the bracelet. They're just like that folded steel, like flat, like they're not, I would call it like, when we do like OEM for people, like there's A grade and then there's B grade and there's like level like C grade. Like these are like, I wouldn't even put those in B grade. Like a lot of the older stuff. Like the movements are good, the hands are good, everything like that. But the quality and finishing, like the older stuff, is not anywhere close to what it is now. Like the stuff now is good. Like it's super nice.
So this reminds me, I never ran this store, and this was, I don't know, at least 10 years ago now, but I had access to one of the Rolexes you were talking about. Like I think it was like an early 70s Submariner. And what I wanted to do was compare it to a then modern, like $200 or $300 Seiko diver. And I wanted to say how this Seiko diver, which $200 or $300 in a lot of ways is better made. But more importantly, look how this 1970s Rolex is made a lot like a Seiko. Folded this, you know what I mean? And it was like this $300 Seiko was in some ways better than this, you know, and again, even at the time it was considered valuable. Today it's even more valuable. But like these were not, you know, everyone looks at them as like holy grails. If you were a consumer at the time, you'd be like, it's nice, but it's not perfect.
Yeah. Like those little things, like if you started buying like, let's say modern Rolexes, you know, and you started collecting those and you're like, I gotta have a vintage piece, but you'd never seen one in person. And like if you like bought this thing sight unseen, you'd get it and you'd be like, no way this is real. Like this can't be. Like the evolution is just insane. Like it's, that like there's no difference between like a vintage Rolex and a vintage Seiko. Like you said, like they're the same quality.
Yeah.
If not worse, you know?
I know. And you know that crazy. And I know that, but like the average collector there so does not want to hear that, right? Like there's an emotional issue now because one of the things that's happened, and this has happened after we sort of started getting to know each other, is the social media market with its style of messaging created what I'll call unreasonably high expectations. There's all these people out there making promises that if you buy this watch, if you wear this watch, if you own this watch, all these good things will come to you. People will say things. You'll feel some certain special way. And, you know, it's going to be, you're just not going to believe how nice it is. You know, it's so perfect. These gnomes in Switzerland, they care about nothing except the fit and finish. And, you know, if you can't afford the one today, they were still doing it decades ago. And that's all total BS. And I hate that because I'm of the opinion that it's better to under-promise, over-deliver, and then make someone happy that way. And I think you still do that. I try to do that for better or worse as in my sales approach. But the reality is the consumer is being sold a very, I don't know what the even word, a kind of a fantasy package of expectations. And then they get angry at people like us, like, oh, that expensive watch you guys told us to, and like, I didn't tell you to buy that. Like, it didn't make me feel amazing, so I'm upset with the industry now. And it that happens a lot, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, that's kind of funny. Like, we've always, like, I never really tell a story behind my watches. Like, me and you have talked before. Like, I am not a marketing guy at all. Like, I'm like pure engineer, creative, you know, designer. But actually, like, marketing and advertising, like, just, no, I'm not promising, like, you buy my diver watch, you're going to become, you know, the world's best diver, you know, but I am promising that it's a really, really good quality watch, and I'll spec out every detail that we put into it, you know. But yeah, there's the marketing hype is there's a lot of, like, we work with, I mean, I manufacture watches for over 100 different brands. So like half of these guys are marketing guys, don't know anything about watches. And then the other half know everything about watches and nothing about marketing. So like it's rare that someone has both of those, like brains, like you're either the storyteller or you're like the engineer. Like it's really impossible, I think, to be both. Like we don't see
because they are actually conflicting skills.
Yeah.
Marketing is selling a dream. Engineering is producing a reality.
Yeah. And it like if you look at like a lot of the products out there, the ones with the most stories, like the biggest advertising, are usually lesser products for more money than the silent killers. There's certain brands that are super, super high quality and no one's ever heard of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a weird business, really.
It's weird until, again, you step away a little bit and you recognize that the companies that both have a good product and market well have two completely different teams or people that are in charge of this. There is a very, very small number of individuals out there who care about the product, but also know how to manipulate. Because again, you can't manipulate a good product into existence. You have to deal with physics and reality and nothing you can sort of argue your way around. You can't have a bad watch and and have an artistic presentation and make someone think that it works well. Like, it's just not going to work. It either is or isn't of a high quality. But then on the marketing side, you're creating desire. You're saying this guy or this girl wants to feel this way. So I'm going to tell them how engaging with my brand will help them feel that way, which has nothing to do with engineering a physical product.
Right. Yeah. I've always just focused on how good can I make my products.
And that's best. But you can see how in like an ideal world, there's some marketing department who sits there and thinks about how to take your hard work and how to make it sexy all day.
Exactly. Yeah. Like that's the part that I've always been removed from or never really, attempted. Like, surprisingly, we've been really successful just on word of mouth, really, from 2007 until now. Like, we've never really done any big advertising. Like, we'll do like a little print ad or sponsored ad, somewhere here and there, but otherwise just social media and word of mouth traction.
Now, let's sort of unpack a little bit about the things you do today, because you've done a few things throughout history. We talked about how you began sort of being a modifier, coming up with your own loom. And I remember that, I don't know how much manufacturing for others you were doing at the time, but I do remember that you were doing loom for people. They could send dials to you and you would paint them, or maybe you even made your own dials. But as I recall, that was sort of the beginning of you being a supplier. But today, you still have the Lüm-TEC brand, plus you have the other side of your business, which is, I don't know if you want to call it white label or whatever, but you are doing a lot of the background manufacturing work, even some of the design work for, as you said, like over 100 brands. That because you're not just doing Lüm-TEC, and the referral business can be strong when it comes to this sort of personal service and being a supplier, you have been able to escape by having your marketing be your work, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we started I think it was probably about 2 years in. We were approached by a few different startup companies just to help them. They liked our stuff and liked what we were doing. That straight up said that, we want to do that too. And I was like, well, let me help you, let's do this together. I never really wanted to partner or be part of anyone else's brand. But I wanted to kind of, like everyone I work with, I want them to be successful. I want them to be, just grow their brand just the same. So we'll do the full CAD design, all the engineering, technical stuff. We'll figure out what their retail price range is, make sure that everything they do is, they have the right movement. For if you have $1,000 watch, you can't have a, NH35 or cheap movement. Everything has to be worthwhile for what they want. And if they have something that's crazy, I'll tell them it's crazy, and if it's, if they're being too modest, we'll spice something up. But it just kind of like snowballs. Like I helped so many different brands, and then they start referring people to me, and like now we get 5 emails a day for companies that want us to build their watches or design them for them.
Now, what do you make of the fact that there seems to be this endless stream of entrepreneurs, would-be founders that want to make their own brand? I mean, it seems relatively consistent. You talk about a certain number a day. I totally believe it. I'm sure it's sort of been up and down over the years. But the reality seems to be that for the last 15 years, consistently, there's a strong desire for people to want to start their own brand. Obviously, the market can't sustain them all. But just on a sort of personal and professional level, what do you make of the fact that there's still so many people that want to be their own brand founders?
I mean, I can't blame them. I mean, that's what I did. But I think what happened is when Kickstarter came around, everything kind of changed. Like even like there's not as many people using Kickstarter anymore. But I think it just kind of sparked the idea that people can do that. Like a lot of people, like they grow up with just blue collar families and stuff, and never had like a lot of money, or no one ever told them that they can do anything. But now they're seeing everyone do it. Like nobody's just getting on Kickstarter, starting something, and then becoming a brand. Like it kind of like just started a revolution, I think. Yeah, like the Indiegogo. Like now everyone sees that they can do it. Where they didn't before. It seemed impossible.
Yeah, I want to comment on the psychology there. What it really is a revolution in changing who has the risk. Mm-hmm. So what you used to have when I started is if there was a new brand, by the time they would reach you, they more or less had much of the brand set up. They had money. They usually had products. They were beyond the prototyping phase. They had stuff to sell. They were ready to operate as a functioning company more or less right away.
Right.
When Kickstarter came around, it and again, I'm just sort of expanding what you're saying and totally agreeing with it. It created this idea that you could distribute the backer, right? You as a company, rather than trying to get investors, could turn consumers into would-be investors. And I know there's a lot of legal hoop jumping to sort of make this work, but essentially that's what it is. It used to be that the watch industry, if you wanted to have a new brand made, you didn't per se go to investors, but you went to retailers. You went to people who would be selling these watches, and you said, hey, this is my idea. Would you like to buy, I don't know, a certain number of units? Back me. And the retailer had the incentive to do so because if it worked out, they would have a product they could sell at a profit and ideally get in early with a brand and, grow with them. So the retailer had a reason to quote unquote invest. The consumer, all they were promised, and again, this is sort of the beginning of Kickstarter and it's changed, was, well, if you back us now, you'll be able to own this at a much lower price than when it's ready for retail. But then that kind of went away and it was just buy our watch before it's a watch, not really at a discount because we're only making this one run. And if you are a founder, this is a great thing because it's not that there's no risk, but you're distributing the manufacturing risk to people who basically have no way of coming after you if it doesn't work out. And so I hate to put this as something which is unfriendly for the consumer because in a lot of ways it's great that there's new brands, but the reality is that the shifting of risk to the consumer, to a wider pool, I think is what contributes to the activity. Maybe you'll agree or disagree. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of people did get burned on Kickstarter. So I think it's kind of fading out a little bit.
Tiny little bit.
They're
just moving off Kickstarter. They're just going direct.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
I've convinced a lot of people to do that. Like, I think like if you start on Kickstarter, it also gives your brand kind of like a stigma as a Kickstarter brand, so, but then if you start without Kickstarter, then you're obviously not getting anywhere near as much exposure. And it seems like the ones that really do well on it are spending more on advertising than they're raising on Kickstarter.
That's absolutely right. The last couple of years of we'll call it the crowdsourcing or the crowdfunding context has been that you have to put a lot of money into promoting it. And
a lot of money.
our entire sponsored post product on the blog to watch, we've been doing for over a decade now, and we do it quite well. That's where that began from. It began from brands who wanted to promote their Kickstarter campaigns coming to us. And I was like, wait a minute, there's a problem here. I get how there's value to the consumer, but you're asking us to endorse a product that we've never seen and may never exist. We're saying that if you want to reach your audience, that's cool, but the message has to come from you and not us. You have to be confident enough and put a small, modest amount of money behind this message to show our audience you're serious and that you're not fly by night. Even with that, there's been some sad stories over the years of these brands not able to cut it. But that has always been our perspective is this is a highly speculative thing. If you can't have the confidence to say it yourself, if you want to sort of pretend that we're able to endorse you when we have no idea what you make, like that doesn't make sense. And so that's actually was the beginning of probably our most successful advertising product, because what we were trying to do is have a fair way of introducing these projects to our audience without pretending as though we are endorsing something that we just don't even know if it's ever going to be a thing.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
So
and then it got weird too, because a lot of existing brands were using Kickstarter too, which they were just using it as an advertising platform. You know, you have like brands that have been around for 10 years launching new models on Kickstarter. Yeah. And it got a little confusing for a while.
It did. And again, as the media person, I can sort of unpack that, and I can say this industry, at least in the modern times, not historically, in the modern times, does not really know how to assert itself without saying, hey, we have a new product. It's not really good at having a productless way of promoting a brand, its virtues. The company's used to. But these days, brands feel that there's very few options other than, hey, we have a new product to market themselves. Mm-hmm. So what they try to do is bypass the need for traditional advertising, and it's not that effective, to be honest, but they love it because it seems like they're getting multiple birds with one stone. So they for them, the Kickstarter thing seemed like magic. They're like, wait a minute, we can have a new product without having a new product. We can promote without having to promote. And these people that are just, voracious for new stuff will come here and see it. But it was a variation on let's allow the product to do the marketing for us so we don't have to.
That's true.
So, okay, so let's go back a little bit. So you were being sort of a little bit of a supplier. You started your own brand. Talk a little bit about that time. You had to make certain decisions, growing Lüm-TEC, growing yourself as being a supplier. It seems that especially 10 to 15 years ago, your business could have gone through a lot of different trajectories. You seem to have a lot of opportunities, unclear, know what to do. Talk about some of those important decisions you had to make where you were like, okay, we're going to go down this direction or we're not. Because to service, over 100 clients, that's not a small side thing. That's a full-on operation.
It is. I think like the obviously made plenty of mistakes, and expensive mistakes throughout the years. But like in the beginning, I think the biggest the thing that jumped everything was hiring people to do things that I didn't need to be doing, like shipping orders, packaging, answering just general sales emails, doing service. Like for the first probably 4 years, I handled all of our service, repairs, assembling, shipping. Like I was trying to do everything myself. I didn't have as much time to do, the stuff that was bigger scale, like actually focusing on more designs, focusing on branching out and building watches for other brands too. Like now that I've hired people to do all the small things, it's a lot easier for me, to run and do the bigger things.
And for you, what bigger things do you find that you enjoy? Because you seem to be someone that still probably likes to sit at the bench and do certain things. And I'm just curious, once you free up your time, where do you find yourself applying yourself?
I like kind of like doing like giving people direction, where to go, like helping other brands succeed. I really enjoy that. Like helping people with designs, like doing all the technical stuff. Like I love that. It takes a lot of time, but I guess like more like consulting. that's what I enjoy the most about it. I don't enjoy like day-to-day managing employees and things like that. Like
no one really does.
No, like at the end of the day, like it's still a business and a company. You know, they're paying taxes, paying insurance, paying utilities, and keeping things running. And that part of it is annoying. You know what I mean? It's not fun. But like the things I do enjoy is actually helping people with their designs, helping them bring their dreams to life. Because it's a different time now. Like you couldn't do this stuff 15, 20 years ago. Like I mean, I had to take on a partner to get started. Like he loaned us like, I don't know, it was $100,000 or something like that to start. And without that, I couldn't have got off the ground. But like now there's so many ways to fund everything. And so there's just a lot more people in it.
Yeah. Now, when you talk to people today that want to start their own brands, or people that maybe you've worked with and they're talking about new models, what are some of the fresh concerns or modern things that they're talking about? The market changes. There's a lot of instability. Obviously, when you work with your clients, part of it's like therapy. You have to hear all their concerns, all their hopes. They're just offloading to you. Share some nuggets of things. You can of course keep people private, but share some of the sentiments you've been hearing lately, because I'm curious to know what's on the minds of these people.
We're getting a lot of lately people using industrial designers to come up with products, and we're seeing some absolutely insane, crazy things that look super cool, but when you put it in CAD and cut it in half, and you see like thin edges and things that aren't possible. So we're seeing a lot of that. So it's a lot of basically fine-tuning everyone's ideas to reality to make them actually work. But it's getting more and more crazy because people are using AI now to design watches.
Right. A lot of that.
And AI comes up with some wild stuff. Like it actually looks good. Like it does. But it's designing a lot of impossible things. So we're kind of taking that and making them possible to manufacture, and they look a little different by the time we're done. But so it's just a different process.
Oh, like so you must love that challenge. That sounds right up your alley.
That's extremely fun. I love doing that. And I love doing like private projects. Like we'll do watches for like the FBI, SWAT teams, like the Secret Service. Like those are the funnest things in the world for me. Because they'll show me their logo, they'll tell me what they need, and then we'll just come up with something, just a bunch of concepts for them, and I love that. Like those guys are the funnest people in the world to work for. But they're the general like OEM anymore. Like things are getting a lot more complicated than they used to be, and I think AI has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important to say that nearly every modern watch designer I know uses AI as inspiration, meaning where they used to maybe, we'll say, sketch stuff out, they'll talk to AI to get initial ideas. That's not what they'll necessarily use, but they're getting a lot of direction. But as you said, AI is not bound to things like manufacturing tolerances and material, concerns. No. So they're coming with something. They're like, oh, this is like 85% of the way there. Can you probably take it the last 10%? And you're like, that's the hard 10%.
Yeah. No, it's cool. Like my first watch, I sketched out on a piece of paper. Like, and ever since then, like, it's weird because I don't really follow. I don't really look at other watches and other brands, like what everyone's doing. I feel like it keeps my own ideas more original.
Sure.
Because I'm not kind of following someone else, but I see what we're designing for other people. And yeah, AI is definitely making a huge, huge difference in, what people are wanting.
And there's no sort of turning back. Once this tool exists, it's, I think, too attractive for designers as well as founders and things like that. But the thing is, it doesn't really change the playing field, because no matter how creative AI is, manufacturing has yet to sort of keep up, right? Like there's still realities. But within the last 10 to 15 years, there's also been an explosion in manufacturing opportunities. Whereas maybe you could make it before, but you couldn't 3D print it. You'd have to CNC machine it. Yeah. Talk about some of the emerging technologies, especially in the last decade, which have fundamentally changed what you can make.
Yeah, metal 3D printing is really cool.
Yeah.
We've got a brand we're working with now. He's basically doing 3D printed metal cases, 3D printed metal dial elements, and then we basically made a whole like the sealed section of the watch out of like CNC machine steel to fit his external parts, like stuff like that. I mean, it's like science fiction stuff, but it's pretty cool. So he can make. We're basically giving him a watch that's almost like a internal skeleton. I mean, it doesn't look like anything, but his parts bolt on top of it and around it.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's got the ability to, whatever we design, just print it out and can make something individual for each customer. Really, like different case, which is cool.
I know that one of the things that has been emerging is, I guess, for lack of a better term, solid loom. Right, loom used to be. We'll call it a paint. You clarified earlier that it's not exactly a paint. There's like, big crystals in it. But now we have solid material that you can cut, you can machine. You don't necessarily have to paint our numerals. You could technically cut them out and apply them. I haven't worked with a lot of it. I think a lot of it looks cool. I don't know the quality. What is your own assessment of some of those new types of loom? And have you used any of it? Have you adopted any of it?
We've seen plenty of it. We've done a lot of it with OEMs. But first of all, it's expensive to do because you have to mold each individual marker needs a separate mold.
Okay, so you can't really cut it. It's got to be molded.
No, it's not cut. And it's also, like when I told you the loom is actually little crystal particles. It's kind of like, the best way to imagine it is like popcorn salt. Like it's little crystals that do not dissolve. The solid loom is actually encased in plastic instead of encased in, resin that evaporates. Mm-hmm. So it's not as bright as the
interesting
material. And we compared the new X2 loom with the Lumicast markers to our X1 with our application, and ours was almost 2 times as bright and glowed longer too.
Interesting. So there's
it
always
cool
pluses
in the daytime. Yeah, I mean, I like the 3D elements. And actually, like this, our Eclipse watch, we were planning on doing that with our markers, and then we tested it. Then we started getting some of our own customers. We're using like X2 Loom, the best stuff you can get, and they have to be made by Tritech in Switzerland. There's another company doing it too, but we ended up testing it, and we ended up actually molding white plastic blocks and printing our loom and 30 layers on top of it. It was like way brighter, and you still have that 3D look. So there's other ways to do it.
And I'll talk about loom, and I didn't really think about this too much at the time when we started working together, but loom appreciation has sort of taken on its own little subculture, you know, between loom shots and people carrying around like a UV torch. But the loom application as part of the, I guess you could say the pizzazz, the glitz of the watch. It's a real loom. Just used to be like a very, you could see in the dark. Nobody really cared about the loom too much as long as it kind of worked well. Now, the loom is part of the marketing.
Yes.
And
I know. I feel responsible for a lot of that.
Oh, so did you started the trend? Here's a torch, carry this around?
I think so. I think we posted some pictures back in the day, like our watch glowing and lighting up a hallway, I think so. There's a lot of brands that have caught up to what we're doing, I would say we're the absolute brightest possible, because we are, but there's other brands that are doing the same, same printing a bunch of layers and making thick, wide markers, and they're also flash, torches. So, but it's, people started to appreciate that. Like, I always thought like a watch should be fun, like even like my first models, like, we need a cheaper quartz model. Let's do it. Should we do a 3-hand quartz? I'm like, no, that's kind of boring. Let's make a chronograph so you got like some buttons to push or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But and then like the loom is like, it's fun. Like have you had any watches with tritium tubes?
Sure.
Like, it does work in the dark, but it's kind of boring, right? Like,
it's not very bright. It's not very bright.
No, like if you're walking outside and you know the sun's hitting your watch because you're a watch guy, right? And then you walk under a tree or something like that into the shade, and you look down and you just watch that thing just light up, right? Like tritium won't do that. You know? Yeah.
No, I you were ahead of your time there. I guess this was trying to say you didn't realize it would be a thing, but the moment you had, because again, this is before Instagram, but the moment people could start posting their Lume shots, and especially in the presentation sense, the number of people who during a watch show or some type of meeting would literally just like carry around a torch and be like, check this out. And it's again, it's not really a demonstration of how you would use your watch. You don't really like are in a dark place and be like, well, let me take out my light to charge my watch and then read it. If you have a light, you're just shining it on your watch. But
yeah, we've got this always handy, right?
Oh my God, that's a big one. How many watches is that supposed to charge?
Just one, like it's always fun. You just fire the thing up in the daylight, like it's just watch nerd stuff, like it's. You don't watch you gotta have fun with your stuff.
But here's what no one's done that I don't understand. No one has built in small UV LEDs into the bezel or the dial. Like that for me is the ultimate joke. Having lights built in. You have? Really?
Yeah, for another brand. So it was, we prototyped it. It ended up being like, so you need a separate battery, you need a separate chip. So we had lights shining up into the bezel, and then we had the bezel like at a 45-degree angle and mirror polish.
Okay,
so
the lights
would shine up through these holes, and they would kind of bounce onto the dial. The dial had little moissanite crystals, and they had Lume markings on it and stuff. And it was cool, but like, how the hell do you charge this thing? Or how do you change the batteries? Like, it was just turned into it'd be like a user nightmare to use. You know what I mean? So if we can make it like wirelessly rechargeable or something, it would be cool. But it's going to become a really thick watch.
I mean, you're right. Size is an issue, but I just think it's amusing because from a strict practicality standpoint, just put the light in there to like a Casio, like there's just a backlight. But as a watch lover, you're like, no. I want the Lume to tell me what time it is, but I want the lights just to charge the Lume.
Yeah. So I always wanted to do a sandwich dial with the Lume cutoffs filled. So even from the underside, it's just raw Lume, like the hands basically. And I wanted to have the dial wider than the movement, and then have a ring of LEDs under it. So you press it, it would charge the Lume from the bottom, like from the inside.
Yeah.
But like it's always the same issue. What do you do when the battery's dead? And it doesn't take long to kill it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And because you're playing with it,
a watch battery in there.
Yeah. So you'd have to have a separate power source. You'd have to charge it separately. It couldn't interfere with the timekeeping mechanism because it'd be too much to drive. Again, I've been through similar exercises with brands, and I get it. But I think the imagination is what's important, and it remains like a hope. And that's what I think is interesting about this field is that you'll have this idea that's not technologically possible, but you won't abandon the idea. And maybe eventually it will become possible. So like, I think with a solid Lume, it's perfect. People have had this dream. Oh, what if I could just cut an hour marker out of solid Lume? And then it became a reality. And then people get to play with it. Same thing with 3D printing. What if I could just make one case and not have to go through this expensive process, just one case? And now that's possible. And I think that's what's so exciting, because even though watchmaking is traditional, there's constantly new manufacturing technology, materials, parts that keep making it so that new things are possible all the time, even within this traditional space, right? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like even just a lot more factories getting 5-axis machines. Like before, like it's if you have one factory that's got 20 5-axis machines, like things are possible that weren't possible before. Even like the 3D printing, like we're trying to work on possibly doing that too in the future. Like right now, it's not like if we have like we always forge our cases before we machine them, so it's like super dense. With 3D printing, it's still kind of porous and light. The strength is good enough for a watch, but it's still like you can't finish it the same. Like I feel like it's going to keep getting like finer resolution, like printing smaller pieces at a time, and it'll be dense enough where you can finish it.
And at that point, I want to just make all my cases like that, like in the US if I can.
So I was recently speaking to some people about this. I was actually in Germany. I was at Leica, and they actually do a lot of 3D printing for certain things. And what I heard from multiple people is that 3D printed titanium is now as dense as traditionally, I don't know, forged, metallurgied, whatever you want to call it, titanium. And I found that a bit hard to believe because, like you, I had learned that the original 3D printed metal, as you said, was full of holes. And the process of making it made it more lightweight because it obviously had pores in it. And that means you can't polish it. It's not as durable. Have you heard about that 3D printed titanium has the same density?
The parts we've seen, I wouldn't say it's as dense as forged. You can tell, just the weight, it's like it weighs about half as much.
Oh, wow. That's a big difference.
It's super light. It's like holding air.
Yeah.
And it's hard to tell too until you actually try to polish something. We haven't, the customer we have that's doing it is doing the basically raw finish. Like the way it comes out of the printer, it's kind of not quite sandy, but it looks kind of like, I guess kind of like what you'd expect it to look like.
Yeah.
Kind of like that matte finish, but a little bit grainy.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it doesn't look super great. I would finish it, I want to really take something and brush finish. I think brush finishing is the ultimate test because if you look at a cheap Fossil watch and then you look at a Rolex or an Omega, you know there's a difference in the finishing, but you can't really tell why. The brush strokes could be exact even thickness, but until you look at it up close and see that there's no pores, there's no dirt in the metal. When you have that forged pressed metal that's super clean, it looks a lot better and a lot different.
Yeah, and if you go to a Rolex or something like that, what you notice is that process of polishing, even the brushing, is still basically done by hand with certain types of machines, but it's all based upon having a base metal which can accommodate that polish. And so people make a big deal out of Rolex's 904L, or they call it oyster steel and blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, really what Rolex has been trying to achieve is a metal that can be nicely finished, and that's what it's about. It's making, and so that's why they have that. And then, but you said on some of those fossils, they try to emulate that. They're using a inferior metal, but they're also trying to automate it. So rather than having that person, holding it against the brush at the right angle, actually, I've never seen the automated approach to brushing, but I'm guessing it's, some machine like those automated car washes, like the brush coming down, goes back up. They
still even do it. A lot of it is done by hand with machines, but it's on such a huge assembly scale, they're just, One guy, all he does is brush the sides of the case, the right side. And then there's another guy that puts down, he brushes the left side. It's 100 different steps to each one, but it happens so fast because that one guy, that's all he does. He can do it perfect. This is the best right side brushing case guy in the whole company, So he takes him 5 seconds, he passes it down, another one, 5 seconds,
But he does just that redundant task all day.
And he does it freaking awesome,
Yeah.
But the base metals and where it starts, no matter if you take that basic Fossil case and have the Rolex guys finish it, it's still going to look like a Fossil when it's finished because that base metal has pores, it has dirt in it. It's crazy. The spec of 316L stainless steel could be really bad quality stuff, or it could be surgical grade that's perfectly clean. And it's forged, so all those pores are compressed, and now it's just a solid object. And when you brush it, you get that nice bright finish to it.
And this leads me to something interesting because it has to do with consumers buying off of tech specs. And early on, I found that consumers that bought watches really liked the tech specs because it's more difficult to hide things. The tech specs were what it was made and how. But nowadays, even something that's supposed to be as precise as tech specs, a lot of it leaves open for interpretation, like you said, with the type of steel or things like that. So while I admire the heritage of collectors being able to sort of buy off tech specs, now that's become really part of the domain of marketing as well, right?
I think so.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the Lüm-TEC brand? Because I guess it's been kind of a playground for you. It seems like you could have made it bigger. You've been comfortable to a certain size. You like being able to experiment and things like that. And again, it's near and dear to my heart. And we're obviously talking about ways of making Lüm-TEC even more popular. But talk about some of the reasons why you may have or have not tried to grow it. You've sort of kept it at a stable, but again, kind of slight, modest simmer and never really on full boil. Talk a little bit about why. Obviously, you have a lot of other clients and that supplements your business, and you obviously can't do everything at once. But for people that are curious as sort of what your motivations or psychology are, talk a little bit about why and how you juggle the various duties you have. And is Lüm-TEC going to be a greater area of focus in the future?
I mean, we focus pretty hard on it, but I've always just kind of kept it pretty small. Like I think this year we're making 1,400 watches, and then they're all like a little bit expandable. Like if we have something that, you know, is numbered to like 300 units, like the first year we might make the first 100 serials of that. Like we keep it pretty small and safe. Like it's like Lüm-TEC's always done well. It's always been steady. But I didn't want to I think sometimes if you grow something too fast and too much, like it's just, it becomes overwhelming. Like I'm not very good at running a huge company, I don't think. You know, like I can manage where we're at, and then doing all the other designs for everyone else too. Obviously takes up a lot of time. I don't know, I guess been comfortable with where it is and don't really need for anything else, you know, but it could be easily, you know, 10 times, you know, if someone actually wanted to do a little bit of marketing and, you know, get the word out there a little bit, you know, so.
I find it interesting because if you go to one of the watch fairs, what you don't recognize is there's essentially two different types of brand leadership mentalities. One mentality is, I chose this business because I wanted to have less headaches. I'm okay at maintaining a certain size as long as it sort of keeps a certain low stress threshold. Yes, I could expand, but it would imply hiring more people, extending ourselves financially in more riskier territory. I'm actually okay at this modest level. Then you have this other group of people who have all the interest in the world in growing. We see this as a starting point. We're hungry. We want to expand our distribution. We actually want to make more models. We may want to make more expensive models. And as a consumer, it's very difficult from afar to tell which is which. But you agree that there's sort of these two different camps of, I want to have sort of a steady, you know, in hobby business, or I see this as an entrepreneurial enterprise to grow and maybe even sell the brand or hire a CEO one day, et cetera. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And we've always just kind of played it safe. You know, like it's, I think we did back in like 2010 or something like that. We had we just launched like 60 different models or something. Like it was crazy.
Wow.
But then it's like to manage that many different models in production, to even write, you know, like I'm the guy that writes all the, like the manuals and everything, like owner's manuals, and like it's a lot. And then like, which ones do you market? So without like a team of people, it's pretty hard to do much more than we're doing.
And if you had people come in and say, Chris, what you're doing is great. You stick with design and manufacturing, but I want to grow the business. I want to market it. Maybe I want to take it to some stores. Have you had people come to you with those types of, we'll call them pitches and proposals?
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean,
really?
I've historically turned down a lot of them, you know, but, I think it would probably be good eventually for, someone to just kind of help with running the business and having me focus on what I do best is, you know, designing, controlling manufacturing, consulting, that kind of stuff, you know, like that's the stuff I love. But yeah, like you said, marketing, expanding, like it's not really in my wheelhouse, you know.
And has it turned you off because of the unpredictability, because of the fact that you can't really see the trajectory? And again, as an engineer, that can be uncomfortable.
Yeah, that and just like unpredictable, like political climate and everything. Like I can give you a good example. Last year we had on order from Salida, like, over $100,000 worth of movements.
Mm-hmm.
And they take like 6 to 8 months to get them.
Right.
By the time we ordered those and put down a 10% deposit, number one, the CHF to USD dropped. So our price went up about $30 per movement.
Wow.
And then we got hit with 39% tariff.
Yeah.
Out of the blue that we didn't have before. So now our $100,000 worth of movements is now $170,000. Like it's really hard to predict what's going to happen. So we kind of play it safe where we know we can manage whatever we're doing.
Now, speaking of that, a big part of what you do and a big part of the conversation, which happened really after you did all this, was American watches. And you're in an interesting space because you obviously have to use a lot of foreign suppliers, both in Asia and Switzerland. But Lüm-TEC is an American company. You're in Ohio. You do a lot of this work out of America. Talk a little bit about the interest in watchmaking, for lack of a better term, happening in the United States. What's reasonable, given the expectations, and also how it's evolved. Because when we started, you were amongst a very, very small number of companies that could perform anything like you were doing. Now it's not that much different, but you have more suppliers. You have even some competitors. Again, I know I sort of asked a bunch of questions there, but talk about the sort of American side combined with the sort of manufacturing and business running side of things.
Right. I think if our made in USA rules were the same as made in Switzerland, I think we'd have a lot more industry here for actually producing parts and manufacturing. But right now, like to say made in USA, we need a USA made movement. I think it's 99.2% made here, which right now is impossible.
Right.
We don't have even the movements that are being made here are actually like, from India or from Taiwan, Japan, whatever. But we'd have to make even things like seals, like sapphires, and you would have like something right now that would sell for $500. If it were all made here, it might be $2,500.
Right.
And there's no market for it because of the specs, what it is. Just because it's made here, we can't sell it for 5 times as much. So I think that's kind of like the biggest holdback is like the Swiss laws. It has to be designed there, and it's like 60% of the value of the watch, which, as we know with companies like Rolex, could be the advertising is part of the value of the watch. So it's a very loose rules, but made in USA is tough. Like we're trying to do the cases and things like that, but
so let me just try to unpack that. And I think it's interesting. What you're saying is that the incentive for a lot of companies to set up in the US is the ability for the product itself to say something akin to made in America. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that the standards for made in America are so much higher than made in Switzerland or Swiss made, such that the incentive to have companies founded here, aside from maybe local cost control and stuff like that, doesn't seem to be that high because a lot of this stuff is still vastly less expensive. So maybe for final assembly and, of course, some of the layers of engineering and production and oversight, it makes sense to have people here. But the idea of having all this stuff made in America, there's just a bunch of economic things that kind of go against that idea.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think if the Swiss made standard was the same as made in USA, I don't even know if like this day and age, if any of the Swiss companies can even meet it.
Barely any. A few, yes, but barely.
There's a small handful, but like even the best companies, like are they making their own, O-rings there? Are they, like there's so many different pieces and parts that almost makes it impossible. But so if it's going to cost 5 times as much on a retail price, you can market the heck out of that and probably get people to pay it eventually, I think. But is it enough incentive to spend, $30 million to set up a factory here? And then you got to find all the people that have the specialties, or you can use a factory that's been in business for 60 years making crown tubes that knows exactly how they're perfect every time. Or you're going to learn to do it yourself and hire and train people to do it and run them. Like it's almost like an impossible dream anymore.
But people keep trying. And I think you'll agree that while we're not 100% there yet, in the last 10 years, there's been a real push in different parts of the country. You know, and I think that all that really does is increase the culture here, which means that there's more people that know about watches, they're thinking about watches. And, you know, when you go to the watch shows here, there's a few of them. I think what's always surprised me is that while it benefits a lot of foreign companies, because there's still a lot of companies that are not American that are there, it's always had to be Americans that set up these events and maintain them. That despite the fact that these Asian companies or these Swiss or European companies could make so much money, they could never rally around actually organizing an event or putting on themselves. The American sort of homegrown watch culture and sense of enthusiasm had to build a space for them to come and make money from us. And I think it's kind of ironic that they're happy to come and take that business opportunity, but it was still reliant on sort of native effort to even make that possible for them. And I think the same thing actually goes with stores. The best stores to sell watches in the United States come from Americans wanting to create that. It's not from like Swiss being like, oh, this looks like a good market. We'll invest here. We'll hire our own folks. That always tends to be a failure compared to somebody here in the United States. And of course, it's a big place and it's going to change on the location, the region. But someone that knows Texas is going to have a watch store in Texas. They're going to do much better than someone coming from Switzerland. You know, in your neck of the woods, in the West Coast, East Coast, it still is local enthusiasm, which I think creates and caters to the market, even if what they're ultimately selling is a foreign good. But I've never seen any foreign watch business come to America and both create demand and sell against it in a modern sense. You might say Rolex, but Rolex had multiple decades head start and still, of course, relies on local retailers in a huge, huge way. But would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah. I mean, look at like Seiko, Seiko and Citizen, be a pretty good example. Like they don't have any like direct marketing, you know, like sales here at all. Like they're all just retailers.
Yeah, for the most part, and their own. It's still heavily, you know, run by Japan, which is not a bad thing, but it's just interesting because this market, the United States, has historically been and is today still the most important market in the world for watches. And I know that there's a lot of issues with tariffs and political uncertainty, but despite all that, it's actually worse than other places. America still continues to be the most important consumer market. And if the watch isn't sold here, something about American demand or marketing helps create that demand in other markets. So America continues to be the most important place. And that's why I think it's interesting and important to continue to talk about it, because we really are the center of the watch world. And I'm sure that you've always felt that no matter what's been going on in the business, how loud or quiet you've been, you've had this sense that you exist in the epicenter of this industry. For sure. Definitely. Yeah. You're like, I don't know what to say. You said it, Ariel. Switzerland is, you know, it's like the home of like when everyone that doesn't know about watches that they assume everything's just made in Switzerland. Right. But like everything, but I think their majority of their sales are probably in the US. Oh, yeah. You know? And they admit it privately, even though they don't necessarily want to say it out loud. It's convoluted. I mean, I think the last thing I'll say on it is kind of a funny anecdote where brands like to be fair and egalitarian. So they'll be like, oh, no, we couldn't possibly give the United States as much resources as, a market like France, even though they're completely different sizes. They're like, well, the French team is 3 people. Well, then the U.S. team can't be more than 3 people. If the French side gets this amount for marketing, well, we couldn't possibly give more to the United States. That's not fair. Completely ignoring the different sizes of the market and things like that. But like, that's one of the more hilarious things about how they make decisions. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. For sure. Yeah. You see it all the time. How is tastes or expectations changing? Maybe they're not, but you know, there's always a new generation of people coming in. And right now we're really at this shifting point where there's a new generation of kids who have a different language that they speak. I mean, not literally a different language, but different, vocabulary, different ideas. You know, we exist in what I call the internet first era for watches. where people are learning about brands and models on the internet first. Yes, they may have to see it in person to make a final decision, but all their expectations are coming from online marketing. And by the time they see a product, they're having a lot of feelings, where it used to be kind of the other way around. When I learned about watches, I developed my interest online, but it came from sort of a real world backdrop. And again, you were right there on the ground between Lüm-TEC and these many other brands you serve. You get to see a lot of shifting things. Talk about, from your vantage point, how you see things changing, if at all.
They really haven't changed that much as far as like what people are, designing and coming out with. I think the biggest difference is like we're seeing more colorful and more like textures, things like that. Like it's almost like things used to be just pretty simple, and now they're just becoming a little bit more complicated and busy. Does that make sense?
Yes. What do you attribute that to?
I don't know. I think people the Apple Watch and like smartwatches kind of introduced so many people to wanting to wear a watch, and then they got annoyed with this stupid watch, like giving them notifications every 5 seconds and buzzing and then having to charge it. And like, man, maybe I'm used to having something on my wrist. Let me get a real watch now. But like, these are people that have never actually even thought about owning a watch before. Yeah. They just, the Apple's crazy marketing with their, you have to have a watch if you have the phone, right? So these people got it. And then, like I said, their smartwatches are super annoying. Like, they start bothering you after a while. And then people just, so like these people are turning to normal watches, and they're used to seeing all these fun graphics and colors and things on there. And I think that's what a lot of these people like, that aren't necessarily watch guys that are now wanting watches. Yeah,
that's an excellent point, that smartwatches have increased the expectation of, doodads and fun graphics. But I want to point to something else that I think is interesting that I've identified. And again, I'd love to hear if you agree or disagree. And this has to do with the sort of internet first element. Back in the day, who was your customer? It was a retailer. And the retailer had a more conservative outlook. We know that black dials sell. We know that maybe silver or white dials sell. We have a small number of colors that we think are universally loved. So we're going to order watches in bulk on those colors because that's what we think the average person will buy. And there was a wisdom to that. The problem is that in the internet era, it's very highly competitive from a marketing standpoint.
Right.
And this is where I say the law of the jungle applies. Okay. If you are just a green plant in the jungle, you're going to be blending in with all the other green plants. Right. But if all of a sudden you have a wild colored flower, right, or something like that, you stand out in a highly competitive visual space. Right. So what I have seen is that bright blue dial, that crazy design, that texture draws visual attention on the internet, whereas a black dial would just sort of, maybe it's nice, maybe ultimately that would make you the most happy, but visually speaking, in the competitive sort of like jungle ecosystem of visuals online, you're going to miss that. So the wildest colors, the loudest things are the ones that command your attention. And that's why those designs are happening. Maybe you ultimately don't even want to wear that, but you wouldn't have even noticed the like silver dial version because it just would have just gone through your feed without notice.
Yeah, I think people just flip through things, like especially Instagram. We get more likes and more comments and everything on our Instagram than versus like Facebook. But I think people like to see something, they like it, they tap it, they move on. They just keep flip. But if something is bold and bright and like our Eclipse series, like we've got that like a bright orange dial. Like I think that stops you and you have to look at it because it's bright and loud, right? But then ultimately you go to the page, you check it out, and you end up buying the black dial. Like it's not really what I want, but it got my attention.
So
I think you're right. Like
I kind of study this for a living,
draw attention. Yeah.
We're basically out of time, and I've so many things I want to talk about. I guess the last thing I'll ask is, what can consumers expect coming up? I'd like to think that a lot of people are learning about Lüm-TEC maybe for the first time from hearing this interview, and there's a lot to discover. But as someone who never stops moving, what are some of the things that you want people to look forward to with your endeavors in Lüm-TEC? So
like basically what we do is like we produce watches for about 100 different brands, and Lüm-Tec is kind of like our showcase, like the best possible finishing we can do, the best possible machining we can do. Everything is basically the best that we could possibly make it. So like all our products are super high quality. We list out all the specs. Everything's transparent. And it's, I mean, like no stories, no fluff. It's just, I mean, what you see and what you see on there, when you get something, it's better than what you're expecting.
I can attest to that. Chris, where should people learn more about you and the business on the internet?
It's just right on the LUM-TEC.com website. We've got an About Us page, and then we've got all of our models on there and everything. And then our social media, Lüm-TEC Watches page, we're pretty active on there too.
Wonderful. A bit of an undersell, but you're going to over deliver, and I think that's what people sort of get from you. This has been
my motto.
No, it's great. This has been the Superlative podcast interview with founder of Lüm-TEC and Wiegand Custom Watch, Chris Wiegand. Chris, thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Ariel.